rogues, vagabonds, frauds, and scoundrels. I sometimes suspected, like everyone else, I often expect too much of them.
Joey Clark.
Welcome into News and Views in the afternoon. I'm your host, Joey Clark. We got a full house here and a full show to get to, but as is tradition on Tuesdays, we're kicking off the show here with Judge Andrew Napolitano. Judge, how are you today?
Oh, fine, Joey. How are you, my friend?
I'm doing quite well, and the big news came out late last night.
Man, tell me about it. Tell me about it. Newsmax, I was on air with Newsmax until midnight Eastern, and I still had to get up at 5 this morning, so.
Oh, man. So tell me about your reaction to this. This is a thick indictment, or what do they call it, a talking indictment?
Good, Joey. A talking or a speaking indictment is the legal terminology for an indictment that includes, in addition to allegations, all the evidence that supports the allegations. This isn't always done, but occasionally the government wants to make it known how it's going to prove its case. So there are 19 defendants. There are 30 unnamed, unindicted, uncharged co-conspirators. There are 91 different crimes charged, but the whole thing comes down to a conspiracy by this is the government's argument now, by Donald Trump and Rudy Giuliani and others to have false electors from Georgia sent to the Electoral College. They succeeded in getting 16 Republicans to sign documents swearing that Donald Trump had won the election and that they were elected as the electors from Georgia. Now, not all 16 were charged with being part of the conspiracy or with perjury. Only 4 were. What happened to the other 12? They got immunity from the government. They are Donald Trump and Rudy Giuliani's nightmare. They are the chief witnesses against them. The whole thing concerns an effort to get these 16 to sign the documents. Now, Giuliani also tried to get the legislature of the state of Georgia to declare that Joe Biden had lost and Donald Trump had won. But after the certification by the Secretary of State, and then the recount, and then the re-recount, and the recertification, the Republican legislature, the Republican governor, the Republican Secretary of State were satisfied that Joe Biden won the election by 11,780 votes. Your listeners will recall that we don't actually vote for a president. It looks like it on the ballot, but you're voting for electors from your state who promise to vote for the candidate that they are pledged to support. Each state has the same number of electors as it does representatives in Congress. So Georgia has 14 members of the House and 2 senators. Therefore, they have 16 electors. This conspiracy is also what's known in Georgia as a RICO, R-I-C-O, an acronym. I know it sounds ethnocentric. Doesn't it sound like a Goomba nickname? That's what it is.
Are they picking on Italians? What is this?
Yes, they wrote this in the Nixon era. This is 1970 to put the mob out of business. And who became the most famous prosecutor in America for using the RICO statute to bankrupt the mob? Rudy Giuliani.
Wow.
So this statute, which stands for Racketeer Influenced Corrupt Organization, allows the government to tarnish you with the brush of being a racketeer by showing that you engaged in a bunch of little predicate acts that formed the conspiracy in order to achieve a goal that was unlawful. In this case, the fake electors. So that's where it stands. I know that a lot of our Republican friends are upset. The good folks that I was on with Newsmax last night were very, very upset and believe that this is simply election interference. I hadn't read the indictment at the time. Why they released it at 11:45 on a Monday night, I don't know. I didn't get to read it until this morning. Like the 2 federal indictments against him, not like the one in New York, which is very thin, but like the 2 federal indictments against him, this is filled with very, very powerful evidence. And if the government can prove half of this, he's facing half of it. He's facing jail time.
There's so much here. And again, folks, we're talking to Judge Andrew Napolitano. Always great to have the judge on when stuff like this is breaking. But let me start here. When I look at what, say, the sheriff there in Fulton County has been saying, that I think he said this a week or 2 ago, I look forward to handcuffing him, and it came out today that Trump will have to take a mugshot. I bring up those things because a criticism of Trump has been his language of vengeance, of revenge against the deep state. I'm sitting here now just talking about politics, not necessarily the law. This comes across as vengeance. It doesn't come across as justice to me.
I can see that argument. The sheriff, and I'm sure his team would say, we treat all defendants equally. But it sounds as though the sheriff is somebody that doesn't like Donald Trump and relishes this. Right. Now, there were no handcuffs. There was no mugshot in the Mar-a-Lago indictment or the January 6th indictment. There was a booking. There was technically an arrest. An arrest is defined as confinement by the government where you are not free to leave of your own free will. So even though the Secret Service were there, they took a step back. He went into the custody of federal marshals. They had him sign the book as the defendant. They asked him a couple of basic questions, and they electronically fingerprinted him. They don't use ink anymore, and they let him go. They didn't handcuff him, and they didn't photograph him, which apparently is going to happen in Atlanta next Thursday.
And also, say hi to your dog Chris for me. Also, there in Atlanta, Trump say the crazy thing, he may win again, or somebody else wants to pardon Trump who wins. They can't do a presidential pardon for a state crime like this, right?
That's correct. That's correct. I am unfamiliar with the authority of the governor of Georgia. Not all state governors can pardon state crimes. I'm going to assume that he can, since most governors can. But the president cannot pardon a state crime. So right now, Donald Trump is facing 2 federal crimes for which Ron DeSantis says he'll pardon him if DeSantis is the nominee and eventually becomes president. Trump would probably try to pardon himself, which will cause a bit of a constitutional crisis. The Supreme Court would have to rule on that. But the state charges, the one in New York and the one in Georgia, if there is a conviction, the president cannot interfere with it.
Well, and it just seems like this is politically, this is just going to divide the nation more.
Well, you know, Trump, to Trump's credit, he said, you know, every time there's an indictment, my poll numbers go up, and that is a factual statement. So then he said, and this is so Trumpian, and if you know him as I do, you can't help but chuckle. Give me just one more indictment. I need just one more indictment. I just need 4, and I'll be over the top.
That's what he told us here in Montgomery.
Now he's got his 4th, but I got to tell you, and I was saying this to my colleagues on Newsmax last night, now as humorous as Trump can be, and he's got a great sense of humor, and when we're together next, I'll tell you some tales which I wouldn't tell on your show about his sense of humor. This is serious stuff. These are very serious charges, and political defenses will not work. Now, he announced last night that this Monday, he's going to give a speech at Bedminster. That's his club in New Jersey where he spends his summers. And he's going to issue a report prepared by his lawyers, which will refute the indictment. That is an insane thing to do. Why share with the government the roadmap of your defense? The defendant doesn't have to prove anything. The government has to prove guilt beyond a reasonable doubt and to a moral certainty. Why show them what your defenses are going to be? This is where he damages and weakens his legal position by enhancing his political position.
Now, I believe I heard something last night or this morning as this was breaking. The conversation, some legal conversation about how if you use a RICO statute like this, or if you're using sort of conspiracy charges like this is designed maybe for a quick conviction, but these sort of cases really get, delayed in appeal, and it's a long process, especially with this amount of people involved. What's going on there, and am I characterizing that correctly?
Well, it's easier to prove a RICO case and a conspiracy case than a regular crime. I mean, because you don't have to prove harm. The bomb went off, the building was destroyed. They robbed the bank, the bank lost the money. You understand the victim, but these are victimless crimes because by definition, they didn't succeed. Joe Biden became the president of the United States. The Democratic electors from Georgia were validly chosen and validly certified and validly cast their valid votes for Joe Biden. So the government likes these charges because it doesn't have to prove harm. And all of the behavior of the conspirators, the RICOers, if you will, not all of it needs to be a crime, and not all of it needs to have occurred in Georgia. That's why there are just more than 100 of these predicate events that support the conspiracy, not all of which are criminal and not all of which took place in Georgia. Example, Giuliani gave speeches to legislative bodies in Arizona and in Pennsylvania, and then when in Atlanta pointed to Arizona and pointed to Pennsylvania as examples of what he wanted the legislature in Atlanta to do, even though the legislature in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania and Phoenix, Arizona did not do what he asked them to do. So a lot of this is what we call incipient crimes, attempts to commit a crime, beginning stages of crime, agreement to commit a crime. But me as a libertarian, these are thought crimes, Joey.
Right.
This is punishing thought. Where crime is harm, where there is no harm, there should be no crime. But that's not the law today.
And I was about to ask, is there an aspect of having to prove this of a corrupt intent? And I ask that because is it not a part of the Constitution? And it's been done in this country before of having an alternate slate of electors. Like this has popped up before in presidential politics in the Electoral College.
If Rudy Giuliani and John Eastman, the constitutional guru on the team, and he is a constitutional guru, whatever you think of him, had devoted their efforts to persuade the legislature of Georgia to invalidate the popular election and choose the electors on its own, that would have been perfectly lawful. But instead, persuading people to sign documents that were perjurious because they were swearing to something that wasn't true, that's the crime.
Okay, that's making a lot more sense. It's becoming clear. Before we run out of time, quick update on this Pegasus zero-click software. The FBI did an investigation. This was still being used and sold on the market. Who did the FBI find was doing this?
The FBI itself.
What?
The FBI was unwittingly investigating itself, and the purveyor of this was the FBI's own personal vendor, a guy in New Jersey who owns a warehouse where this illegal software, because you can't import it, you can't possess it, you can't use it. So the FBI locked it up in a warehouse. Some FBI agents were using it. Other FBI agents are trying to find out who the hell is using this stuff. It's against the Fourth Amendment. It's the FBI itself. You can't make it up.
Oh my God. And the way you described that too, it sounded like more stereotypes for Italian folks. Like it's a warehouse, it's New Jersey. What do they produce? Olive oil? Like, my goodness. And you can't make this up.
We don't grow olive trees in New Jersey, but we have a lot of olive oil.
Well said. And it's just like, what's gonna give with the FBI? Because we talk about this all the time, Judge. You see members of Congress just screaming mad in these committee hearings.
If Donald Trump is elected, you're going to have a libertarian, not saying I know who it is, but you're going to have a libertarian as the FBI director. If Joe Biden is reelected, more of the same. He loves this stuff. Although I'll give him credit for this. He personally invalidated the zero click. It's made in Israel. Under federal law, the president can unilaterally, doesn't need Congress's permission, impose an embargo. When he was told about zero click, it allows whoever owns it to get in your cell phone or your desktop without tricking you into clicking on a link, hence its nickname zero click. When he learned about that, he said, "Did they have warrants?" And they said, "No." He said, "That's it, we're banning it." So I give Joe credit for that. But in terms of politicizing the FBI, it's in his wheelhouse.
Crazy times we live in. Again, folks, this has been Judge Andrew Napolitano on the air with us. And if you want to go to judgenap.com, you can see what's going on there, judgenap.com, or check out Judging Freedom as podcasts, wherever podcasts are available. I tend to watch on YouTube. What do you got coming up on Judging Freedom
well,
today?
At 2:15 this afternoon Eastern, so just an hour from now, Larry Johnson on the 3 ways the war in Ukraine will end. And at 3 o'clock today, Phil Giraldi, they're both ex-CIA guys. Why is the United States occupying 1/3 of Syria? And how is it we have been there since 2005? And does the American public even know that?
Tune in, folks. And as always, Judge, I appreciate your time. We'll talk again soon.
You got it, my man. All the best, Joey.
I got to see you soon. I want to hear some of those Trump sense of humor stories.
Oh, it's an excuse. It's either I'm going to come to the Gulf Coast or you're going to come to the Big Apple.
There you go. Well, I'm due, but I appreciate it, sir.